Since the birth of our nation, men and women of Italian heritage have proved their courage and loyalty as both soldiers and police officers. 3 Italian regiments totaling 1,500 men assisted the colonists during the American Revolution. Nearly a century later, an estimated 5,000 to 10,000 Italian Americans fought in the American Civil War. More than 100 were Union officers, including 4 generals, 2 naval commanders, 11 naval officers, and more than 28 majors and captains. The Union officer, Major Luigi Palma di Cesnola, received one of the first Medals of Honor, while General Eduardo Ferrero of the 51st New York Volunteer Infantry Regiment was among the first officers to command black troops. Since its establishment in 1862, the Medal of Honor has been given to at least 30 Italian-American men for actions above and beyond the call of duty. Here at home, around the turn of the century, Detective Joe Petrosino of the New York City Police Department gave his life while courageously fighting the Black Hand. During World War I, over 300,000 Italian Americans, including 87,000 Italian nationals, served in the United States military, among them the future mayor of New York City, Fiorello LaGuardia. Italian Americans constituted 12% of all U.S. forces during the Great War. An Italian American infantryman, Michael Valenti, received the Medal of Honor for actions in France. The heroism continued in World War II. Although Hollywood has never produced a movie about him, the flying ace of aces, Major Don Gentili of the United States Army Air Force, shot down more than 30 Nazi aircraft, making him the most deadly fighter pilot in American history. Sergeant John Basilone, United States Marine Corps, is the only soldier to receive both the Congressional Medal of Honor and the Navy Cross in World War II. The record of Italian-American military achievement continues today as the United States battles terrorism. During the Gulf War, U.S. Army Major Marie-Therese Rossi became America's first female combat commander to fly into battle. At only 32 years of age, she was killed in Saudi Arabia when her helicopter went down in 1991. 7 years later, in 1998, Marine 4-star General Anthony Zinni commanded Operation Desert Fox, which saw the United States bombing of Iraq, and more recently, in December 2003, Army Lieutenant General Raymond Odierno, a West Point graduate, led the troops that captured Saddam Hussein. Specialist Salvatore Giunta, United States Army, won the Congressional Medal of Honor for his uncommon valor in Afghanistan. This episode of our show is dedicated to the brave Italian Americans who have sacrificed for the sake of our nation and for our safety. So sit back and enjoy these brief portraits of Italian American heroes. Italian American heroes. Lieutenant Giuseppe Joe Petrosino, NYPD. Around the turn of the century, Italians were immigrating to the USA by the thousands. Most were poor Southern Italians who were desperate to find prosperity in America. Unfortunately, they also brought with them the criminal scourge that had plagued Italy for hundreds of years, as it was known then, La Mano Nera, or the Black Hand. Italian immigrants, poor and fearful of the police in their new home, were unmercifully terrorized by having to pay the pizzo, or protection money, or by suffering abductions of their loved ones for outrageous ransoms. One courageous Italian immigrant came forward to fight this evil, Giuseppe Joe Petrosino. Petrosino was born in Padula, Italy, in 1860. He was sent over as a young boy with his cousin to live with their grandfather in New York City. When his grandfather was killed in a streetcar accident, a kindly judge in the Orphans Surrogates Court took both boys home with him until the rest of the Petrosino family arrived in New York in 1874. It is speculated that his time spent with this politically connected Irish judge and his family opened up avenues of possibility not usual for Italian immigrants of that time. It is not known if those connections allowed him to get a position with the New York City Police in 1883. Petrosino was only 5 foot 3 inches tall, below the minimum required, but he did get a waiver to join the force. Fluent in several Italian dialects, his ability to solve crimes in the Italian community was legendary. Whenever a serious crime took place among Italian immigrants, his superiors would send for him. On July 20, 1895, Police Commissioner Theodore Roosevelt promoted him to detective sergeant in charge of the Homicide Division. But the peak of his career came in December 1908, when he was promoted to lieutenant in charge of the new Italian Squad, or Italian Legion. This was a group of elite Italian-American policemen put together specifically to fight crime organizations such as the Mano Nera. Petrosino worked tirelessly to fight this shame upon decent Italians and Italian Americans. Petrosino handled many important cases in his career, but one of his most famous involved the great Italian operatic tenor Enrico Caruso. While under contract to the Metropolitan Opera in New York, Caruso was threatened by the Mano Nera. Petrosino convinced Caruso to work with the police, and he solved the case. Another important case involved Vito Cascioferro, a low-level Mano Nera member. In 1903, Petrosino charged him with murder, but he was acquitted. Cascioferro then returned to Sicily, and over time became a high-ranking crime lord. Over 100 years later, in 2014, during an unrelated investigation by Italian police, a descendant of Paolo Palazzotto claimed his ancestor was Petrosino's assassin, executing Cascioferro's hit on Petrosino in Palermo in 1909. Petrosino had been sent to Italy on what he believed was a top-secret mission. A recently passed federal law allowed the government to deport any alien who had lived in the country for less than 3 years, if that alien had been convicted of a crime in another country. Petrosino was armed with a long list of known Italian criminals who had taken up residence in the United States and intended to get enough evidence of their criminal pasts to throw them out of the country once and for all. However, Theodore Bingham, the incompetent police commissioner of New York at the time, gave the story of Petrosino's mission to a New York newspaper while Petrosino was abroad. It was believed that the mafia got wind of his mission from this mistake. On February 28th, Detective Joe Petrosino arrived in Palermo. A few hours later, he met the American consul, but avoided the Italian police. He said, "I do not trust them at all. Here I learned things that would make your hair stand on end." He told the consul of his intention to extend the investigation not only to the mafia, but also to the candidates in the upcoming elections. On March 12, 1909, Petrosino received a message from someone claiming to be an informant, asking the detective to meet him in the city's Piazza Marina to give him information about the mafia. Petrosino arrived at the rendezvous, but it was a trap. While waiting for his informant, Petrosino was shot to death by mafia assassins. Funeral rites for Petrosino were performed in Palermo, after which his body was sent to New York. On April 12, 1909, funeral rites were once again conducted in St. Patrick's Cathedral, with over 200,000 people taking part in the funeral procession. New York City declared the day of his burial a holiday to allow its citizens to pay their respects. Petrosino was one of the most courageous and successful crime fighters in the history of the NYPD. At least 3 movies were made of his life and exploits, and books have been written about him. He is truly one of the greatest Italian-American heroes of all time. Italian-American heroes. Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone, United States Marine Corps. There are countless tales of heroism from World War II. Every person who fought in that war has a personal story of heroism and courage, but few who fought would deny that Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone, United States Marine Corps, was among the most courageous and heroic soldiers to ever fight in World War II. Basilone earned both the Congressional Medal of Honor and the Navy Cross for two different heroic actions. He is the only Marine to receive both medals in World War II. Basilone grew up in a large Italian-American family. His father had immigrated from Benevento, Italy, in 1903, and his mother's parents were from the same area, although she herself was born in the United States. In 1934, Basilone enlisted in the United States Army and served in Manila, the Philippines, where he was a champion boxer. After his active service was completed, he returned to the U.S. and worked as a truck driver. After a few months, though, he wished to return to Manila, and he believed the quickest way to get there was to join the Marines, which he did in 1940. December 7th, 1941, the day that lives in infamy. The U.S. entered the war, and Basilone was a soldier in the Pacific, destined to participate in some of the bloodiest battles of the war. In the Battle of Henderson Field on Guadalcanal Island, his unit came under attack by a regiment of approximately 3,000 soldiers from the Japanese Sendai Division. John led the defense with two machine gun sections of about 15 men. They fought almost without a break for the next 2 days. John's comrades were cut down around him until he was left with only 2 of the Marines fighting off wave after wave. He repaired a machine gun, helped move another one into position, and maintained continual fire until backup arrived. John took enemy fire streaking through the jungle to pick up more machine gun belts to keep his comrades supplied. By the time the next dawn broke, he was fighting with just a machete and a .45 pistol. The Japanese regiment was laid to waste. About 3,000 Japanese Banzai soldiers had been killed in the attack, and the airfield had been successfully defended. For this courageous defense, Basilone won the Congressional Medal of Honor. In 1943, Basilone returned to the United States and participated in war bond tours. His arrival was highly publicized, and his hometown held a parade in his honor when he returned. The parade drew a huge crowd of thousands, including politicians, celebrities, and the national press. Basilone was featured in national news and Life magazine and Fox Movietone newsreels. After the parade, he toured the country raising money for the war effort and achieved celebrity status. Although he appreciated the admiration, he felt out of place and requested to return to the war. The Marine Corps denied his request and told him he was needed more on the home front. He was offered a commission, which he turned down, and was later offered an assignment as an instructor, but refused this as well. He requested again to return to the war, and this time the request was approved. Basilone married Lena Rigi in 1944 while training in California to rejoin the war. Lena was herself a Lady Marine. Basilone was quoted as saying, "I wanted to know how it was to love somebody the way Pop loved Mama. At least I wanted a few days or weeks, if I could get it, to know what it was like to be married. I wanted to be able to say, 'I love you' a few times and mean it." Lena agreed to marry me. A few months later, Basilone was in the thick of battle once again, this time on the famous Battle of Iwo Jima. This 5-week battle comprised some of the fiercest and bloodiest fighting of the entire war. On the first day of the battle, he was serving as a machine gun section leader. While the Marines landed, the Japanese fired from heavily fortified blockhouses. With his unit pinned down, Basilone fought his way around the side of the Japanese positions until he was directly on top of the blockhouse. He then attacked with grenades, single-handedly destroying the entire strong point and its defending garrison. He then aided a Marine tank that was trapped in an enemy minefield under intense fire. Unfortunately, he was killed by Japanese mortar shrapnel. His actions helped Marines penetrate the Japanese defense and get off the landing beach during the critical early stages of the invasion. He was posthumously awarded the Marine Corps Navy Cross for extraordinary heroism. Today, Basilone is honored in many ways. Bridges, high schools, and roads have been named for him. There is an annual parade in his honor at his hometown of Raritan, New Jersey. The Marine Corps has named several areas of the training facilities for Sergeant Basilone, and he stands today as a model of courage and service to future generations of Marines. Italian-American heroes. Specialist Sal Giunta, United States Army. Soldiers in the deadly Korengal Valley of Afghanistan, known as the Valley of Death, were devastated by the loss of their comrade, Staff Sergeant Larry Rugel. After that day, as the soldiers listened to the Taliban on their radios, the enemy sounded more confident, and what they said was chilling. They wanted a body of an American soldier. Undeterred by the threat, Specialist Sal Giunta and his squad were on patrol when they were caught in a deadly ambush by Taliban fighters. They were trapped in a classic L-shaped attack, with the enemy at their side as well as at their front. The two men at the front were down and cut off from the rest of their squad by heavy fire. Staff Sergeant and Squad Leader Eric Gallardo recalled that he started sprinting their way. He got about 5-6 feet, and that's when RPGs hit everywhere. He was completely pinned down, so he just started turning at the Taliban and shooting and backpedaling. Gallardo fell and was hit in the helmet by enemy fire. Without hesitation, Giunta ran into the open and dragged Gallardo to cover. Giunta was hit twice. His body armor saved him. Even though Giunta, Gallardo, and 2 other gunners were pinned down by the concentrated gunfire from a number of Taliban positions at close range, they charged forward. Less than 15 seconds into the ambush, Giunta and the others disrupted the attack by throwing volleys of fragmentation grenades towards the Taliban to their west and attacked north. They were trying to reach their 2 wounded comrades pinned down at the front. They ran and shot, throwing grenades at the enemy. They reached one soldier, Specialist Franklin Ekrode, who was severely wounded, but he managed to tell the others the Taliban had carried away 22-year-old Sergeant Joshua Brennan, a tough, easygoing soldier who had earned a Bronze Star and was named Soldier of the Year on his first deployment to Afghanistan. Giunta, seeing that Ekrode was now tended to, advanced with his comrade, Private First Class Clary, through the intense enemy gunfire, looking for Brennan. When they could not locate him where they expected to find him, Giunta ran further forward through the small arms fire and over the exposed open crest of the ridge. In the midst of the ambush, Giunta ran head-on into the Taliban wall of bullets, through their fighting positions and into a clearing where Taliban fighters were carrying Brennan away. "I saw 3 guys," said Giunta, "and I saw 2 of them carrying one guy. And one guy had his arms and one guy had his legs, and they were dragging him." He shot one Taliban fighter and he fell. Running and shooting, Giunta started going for the other enemies, who were already fleeing in fear, but by that time he was at Brennan. Brennan was seriously wounded, but Giunta dragged him back to the American position. The battle lasted a mere 3 minutes. Later the next day, Brennan died while in surgery. Gallardo told Giunta, "You don't understand, but what you did was pretty crazy. We were outnumbered. You stopped the fight. You stopped them from taking a soldier." Ekrode said of Giunta, "For all intents and purposes, with the amount of fire that was going on in that conflict, he shouldn't be alive." On September 10, 2010, the White House announced that Junta would be awarded the United States' highest military decoration, the first awarded to a living recipient since the Vietnam War. He received the medal from President Barack Obama during a ceremony at the White House on November 16, 2010. All of his surviving squad members attended the ceremony. Junta commented on becoming an American hero. He said, "I'm not at peace with that at all. And coming and talking about it and people wanting to shake my hand because of it, it hurts me because it's not what I want. And to be with so many people doing so much stuff and then to be singled out and put forward, I mean, everyone did something. Okay, someone wrote about this and then somebody else approved it. And then a story was told and handshakes were made, and then sooner or later I'm talking to the President of the United States. I don't see how that happened. This is only one moment. I don't think I did anything that anyone else I was with wouldn't have done. I was in a position to do it. That was what needed to be done. So that's what I did." All Americans are proud of you, Salvatore Giunta, and I'm sure your Italian ancestors are also very proud of you. Cent'anni ed auguri. Italian-American Heroes, the Gallery of Congressional Medal of Honor recipients. The Civil War, Luigi Palma di Cesnola, Colonel, 4th New York Cavalry, for courage at the Battle of Aldie, Virginia. Thomas W. Hyde, Major, 7th Maine Infantry, for courage at the Battle of Antietam, Maryland. The Indian Wars, George Ferrari, Corporal, 8th U.S. Cavalry, for courage at Red Creek in the Arizona Territory. Spanish-American War, Franco Fornia, Private, United States Infantry, for courage at Santiago, Cuba. World War I, Michael Valenti, Private, United States Army, for courage in France. World War II, John Basilone, Sergeant, United States Marine Corps, for courage at the Battle of Guadalcanal. Vito Bertoldo, Master Sergeant, United States Army, for courage at the Battle of Hattin, France. Willibald C. Bianchi, First Lieutenant, United States Army, for courage at Bataan Province, Philippine Islands. Anthony Casamento, Corporal, United States Marine Corps, for courage at Guadalcanal. Ralph Chelly, Major, United States Army, for courage at Wewak, New Guinea. Joseph J. Cicchetti, Private First Class, United States Army, for courage on Luzon, Philippine Islands. Mike Colalilo, Private First Class, United States Army, for courage near Untergrecium, Germany. Peter J. D'Alessandro, Technical Sergeant, United States Army, for courage near Katherberg, Germany. Anthony P. D'Amato, Corporal, United States Marine Corps, for courage at Eniwetok Atoll, Marshall Islands. Arthur F. DeFranza, Staff Sergeant, United States Army, for courage near Vaubardon, France. Gino J. Murley, Private First Class, United States Army, for courage near Sars-la-Brière, Belgium. Frank J. Petrarca, Private First Class, United States Army, for courage near Horseshoe Hill, New Georgia, Solomon Islands. Robert M. Viale, Second Lieutenant, United States Army, for courage in Luzon, Philippine Islands. Korean War, Reginald B. Desiderio, Captain, United States Army, for courage near Ipsak, Korea. Joseph Vittori, Corporal, United States Marine Corps, for courage on Hill 749, Korea. The Vietnam War, Louis Albanese, Private First Class, for courage in the Republic of Vietnam. Vincent R. Capodanno, Lieutenant, United States Navy, for courage in the Republic of Vietnam. John Orcaviani, Staff Sergeant, United States Army, for courage in the Republic of Vietnam. Frank R. Fratellenico, Corporal, United States Army. For courage, Republic of Vietnam. Gary W. Martini, Private First Class, United States Marine Corps. For courage, Republic of Vietnam. Louis Rocco, Sergeant First Class, United States Army. For courage, Republic of Vietnam. Humbert Versace, Captain, United States Army. For courage, Republic of Vietnam. The War in Afghanistan. Jared C. Monty, Sergeant First Class, United States Army. For courage in Gawardesh, Nuristan Province, Afghanistan. Salvatore Giunta, Staff Sergeant, United States Army. For courage in the Korengal Valley, Afghanistan. We salute all our heroes.